HF63, we're going to talk about how to use the character. The first part of the character sheet you need to know about is edit mode and play mode. When the edit button here is grayed out, that means it's in play mode. And like I discussed in the other video, when it's red, it's edit mode and you can edit the character as you see fit. You'll need to go into edit mode again when you start spending your experience points. As you can see here, we have the chat window here and the characteristics. I zoomed it in for you so you can see it a little bit better. And again, when you hover over them, you'll highlight what the roles are. And when you click on it, it'll show you the role. The role you need for success and what you rolled. So it's easy to tell. I rolled a 9 for Defender Strength roll. I made it by 3. So that's how characteristics rolls are done in Roll20. The next element on the character sheet we're going to talk about is the vital information. As you can see here, it has its anti-and damage, lift, endurance cost for strength, and reduced endurance on strength, and the present stack. In normal mode, it'll look like this. If I wanted to, in character creation, wanted to change that its strength costs half or 0, I would go into edit and change it appropriately. Now, in this part, the only thing you can modify is the expenditure of endurance. When you click on that, it will reduce the endurance cost of his current by 1. Here we have the info elements for stun, body, endurance, your SCV, your DCV, OMCV, and DMCV, and your pay, endurance, and recover. The stun, body, endurance in this section is your current values. Your combat values are your current combat values, and of course you'd have the appropriate levels clicked on the combat page, and you'll adjust these accordingly. And any powers you have clicked on in the power section, the cost endurance, when you click pay endurance, you'll expend the endurance on all your powers. When you have your post segment 12 recovery, or you take an independent recovery, you click this and it will increase your stun and endurance by the recovery value. The element we're going over now is charges and reserve. As you can see here, the Defender has Power Pack and his Bulldoze. And any powers that are listed as reserve will expend in this section. And any of the Bulldoze he decides to use, you can click on the endurance section and it will expend 1 Bolo. The same thing here, but also if you go into the if you click pay endurance, it would automatically take it out of the reserve as well, as long as it's marked as reserve in the power section. For example, let's say I forget to click that I'm using a Bolo in the power section, so I decide to use it here. So I can just click use here, which is under current. It will say use when you highlight it, and it deducts it by 1. And to reload, just click on under the max, it will say reload, and I'll bring it back to the full value, which is for the Bolos. Or if you're using the Power Pack, it has a recovery value, which will use the endurance battery recovery, and it will recover the amount it says under that. Now we go under the senses element. And under here you can see we have the perception roll and the innate senses that Defender has. Now to do the roll for the perception, just roll the perception roll. And it will show up and you see I have a base 9, and 4 for the stat would give me a 13, and you see the roll is 7. And per usual for the Roll20, you look here, it will say, oh, it's 7, which means I made it. And any time you have any 1s in the roll, it shows a red box, and if it's any 6s, it's a green outline of the box. And the same thing goes for enhanced senses. I just click to use sense, which is the roll. Let's go with the communication suite, and you see this has a blue box around it, which means there's 6s and 1s in the roll, and I made it by 3. Okay, we're going to go to the combat page, so I just click on the combat page tab here, and it puts all the modifiers of OCV and DCV in one place to avoid having to switch pages during the combat. And on the pen and paper character sheet, skill levels and penalty skill levels allow them to set their skills, which is a separate part of the sheet. Putting it here makes it that it's all together and easily accessible during Roll20. First part of the attacks and maneuvers is what we're going to talk about under the combat page. And the first thing you'll see is a checkbox. Normally it will be none unless you're a brick or a martial artist, and you'll be using this more. And you just check off what you're doing. Like if you're doing a block, you just click block and you uncheck the none. And you'll put in the modifiers appropriately. Same thing if you're doing brace, it'll have your DCV. As indicated on the standard pen and paper sheet, it has your phases, how much of a phase it takes, OCV, DCV modifier, damage modifier, and the effects. Now on to combat skill levels. Again, there's a checkbox. As before, when you click them, it activates them, so you know which ones you're going to do. Let's say he's going to do the weapons array. You click those, and what it applies to. It's going to, we'll say he's going to go full offense. It'll increase the OCV 1 per type listed. Since he has 2 levels, you have to list it twice. And you have to set the appropriate levels it's for. If it's OCV, DCV, so on. Or against a half DC. If you want to increase the damage classes by 1/2 per level, as is allowed in the rulebook, which is optional. This section of the character sheet is other modifiers, and you would input your OCV, DCV, or velocity if you're doing like a move through or move by appropriately, and if you're at half OCV or DCV, you just click the box. Now the next section is your combat modifiers. This first part is your range. Let's say you're 17 meters away, it'll adjust your OCV by -4 for the attack roll. Let's say on top of that, you go for a targeted shot for the focus, which is also another -4, which would make it -8. But let's say you want to do a headshot from 17 meters away. It will take your -8 and your -4 and dock your OCV appropriately. Final section on the combat page is your penalty skill levels. Defender don't have any penalty skill levels, but if he did, there would be a checkbox here, just like your standard combat levels, and it'll specify the type, and you would click the range mod, OCV or DCV appropriately. Works just like you do your standard combat levels. Now to get to the powers page, you click on the power tab of the character sheet, and it'll take you to their powers. And the first element you see is powers and equipment. And under powers and equipment, you see there is the checkbox to determine if it's on or off, the cost, the name of the power, the description, and the endurance cost or charges. Okay, we're under powers and equipment. To use a power, we just click on the one we want to turn on, and we're going to do the electric bolt here, which does 12 dice 6, and it expends 1 as 6 charges, but it will expend 1 charge on the charge sheet. So to use it, we just click on the electric bolt. The difference between using the power here or here, if you do it under name, just says electric bolt. You do the description, it will list the description in the chat. We'll do one of each just so you can see. Okay, now we're going to use the electric bolt. As you can see, Defender's OCV is base 5. We didn't use any levels or anything, just as an example. He rolled an 8 and hit location 14, which is thighs, which does 34 stun, 10 body, and hits a DCV of 8. Just a reminder to GMs, when you set up your page, you have to be pro level to use API. Make sure you use the proper API. And it says I hit a DCV of 8. So there you go. Don't forget, of course, if you do use the power, that you either hit expend here or use under charges, which we discussed earlier. But I'll show you the difference when you use the power as description. You click this, and it shows the electric bolt, but it also tells that it's a 12 dice 6 blast, and it's OIF. This time I rolled 11 on the attack roll, hit the thighs again, which is 1-1 on the multiple, 49 stun, and I did 15 body, and this time I hit a DCV of 5. So that's how you use powers and equipment. Just as a reminder to players, when you enter your character, be sure if you have a hand attack to put it in under powers, because even though it shows it in the core page, how many dice you roll, you can't click that to give your hand-to-hand attack. As you can see here, when you hit the description for the use of power instead of name, it gives you all the details of the power, in addition to the attack roll, hit location, stun, body, and the DCV that you hit. The next section we're going into is skills, and to get to that, you click on the skills tab of your character sheet, and you have your skills listed here. Under the first section, you have skills, and have your skill list and the role needed to use it. And to use that skill, all you have to do is click the appropriate role for the skill. Let's do computer programming. As you can see, rolled 13 plus my roll is 11, so that 11 is less than 13, so I make the roll. But as you can see here, I also have skill levels that applies to electronics and computer programming and systems. So let's go ahead and add those two and see what comes up when I do see that my roll increased to 15. So I roll, and you see the levels increased to 15. My roll is 15 this time, which is good. I put the levels on, and I made the roll. The final section I'm going to go into is background, and To get there, you click your background tab, and this has your physical appearance, which you enter appropriately, appearance, your background, personality, and your quotes. And then you have your experience points, and then you have your powers, tactics, and campaign use, all your background information. And this is where you enter your complications. And during gameplay, you don't have to click anything here, just standard hooks for your GM or for yourself as a reminder what your complications are. That's it for this section on how to use your character sheet in Roll20 for using your hero system character sheet. And the reminder is subscribe, share, comment. It all helps the channel. There's also a Patreon link if you want to improve the quality of this channel. And don't forget, always go out there and be a hero.